So I think we have Rory McPhee coming up, and I know that we have Rory in the room. So welcome, Rory McPhee in Fife, and over to you.
Greetings all. I'm just going to put my microphone in. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'd like to present you a high tide meditation, an introduction to seaweed therapeutics. My name is Rory. I live on the east coast of Scotland. I'm speaking to you now from my land, Lindore Curative Forest, 800 feet above sea level. Yonder, through the trees, you may be able to make out the Firth of Tay, named by the Picts after the goddess Tava, known as the Silent Goddess. It is indeed a silent confluence of salt and fresh water, a sumptuous symphony of divinity. The tide has just now started its ebbing journey to somewhere else. I'm a phycologist, that is, I study seaweeds. Phycos is the ancient Greek for sea plant. Much of my lifetime has been spent on the edge of the water at low spring tides. Once upon a day, I negotiated the first ever commercial seaweed gathering license in England and designed and ran the biggest commercial wild seaweed harvest operation in Scotland. As many of you will know, high tidal amplitudes occur as a result of solar and lunar gravitational pull. When the sun and moon coincide during the new moon phase, we experience maximum gravitational pull. The tides spring back and forth with dedicated alacrity so that the high waters are very high and the low waters uncover an expanse of sand, mud, and rock. This is why the spring tides are called spring tides. They spring back and forth. It is this intertidal arena on today's full moon that I've chosen to explore with you. Many of us forage in this theatre of unctuous biodiversity, that is the intertidal. We take what we need for food, but have we explored our relationship, or maybe I should say our non-reductive relationship with sea plants? Have we properly and courteously introduced ourselves? Have we shared any secrets? Have we perchance indulged in seaweed flirting or phyco-flirting? Have we taken things a step further with some serene skin exfoliation with a handful of seaweed? Maybe even, and we can be discreet today about this, used seaweed for sensual frottage with a love partner? And craving your indulgence, have you considered the use of seaweed liquor as a sexual lubricant? So many questions and so much opportunity to explore our awareness of seaweed. Anyway, let's get sensible for a moment. In the land of research science, we have an increasing body of wellness science suggesting the physiological and psychological health benefits from developing our awareness of and in the natural environment. We all know this, and I think the last year has made that lesson even more pertinent. Our awareness often focuses on trees, forests, parks, and gardens. And awareness is the beating heart of this work. Our autonomic nervous system is regulated, cortisol levels reduced, natural killer blood cells invigorated, heart rate variability strengthened, blood pressure subjectively normalized, and sleep patterns reinforced. So far, so good. We know that nature can help make ourselves whole. So I'd like to introduce you to my own personal practice of intertidal awareness, that exuberant, heartfelt reveling in rocks, pools, wee beasties, and the mighty kelp forests. But first, what are the actual chemical mechanisms that operate so effectively when we explore the intertidal at low water? Firstly, the negative ions, the action of fine water droplets around our body There is no correlation, and I repeat, no correlation between negative ions and healing, except that an air column with fine mist, such as being proximate to a waterfall or having a morning shower, is devoid of particulate matter. It is essentially clean air. So if breathing is the soul in action, breathe the limpid air of the intertidal. Secondly, volatile emissions. Yep, seaweeds breathe, or at least they exhale. And what they exhale is both antiviral and antimicrobial. I can smell the seaweeds emitting their terpenoids, chemicals made volatile by the heat of the sun. These chemicals are arguably designed by Shoni, the Celtic sea god, to deter predation and to heal in the event of predation or harm. This self-heal for seaweeds is available to us. Thirdly and lastly, iodine. Our bodies, our minds, our wholeness depends upon this mineral. The fetal development of our babies depends on iodine. This is very recent research from the University of Glasgow. Yet we are all iodine deficient, all of us. Happily, iodine is volatile and it's emitted by brown seaweeds at low water spring tides on a sunny day. And iodine acts transdermally, so by breathing deep, we can top up and enliven our mind and our body. So we have the stage set. Today, as I said, it's a full moon. So that means on Scotland's east coast, low water is always around 9 to 10 morning and evening. Whilst, for instance, in Cornwall, spring low tides are around midday and midnight. Let's say the sun is shining. I'm wearing a helmet and a wetsuit and an old pair of trainers, which I'm soon about to cast off. I'm going to give you a glimpse of what I call Selkie Kelpie, healing at the water's edge, essentially a Celtic iteration of thalassotherapy. As my fingers gently stroke the seaweeds, as my eyes luxuriate on the riot of seaweed color, as my lungs fill with clean, briny air, breathe in for 3 seconds, hold breath for 4 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds. Breathing, breathing. I let my mind wander, then quietly bring it back to the rhythm of my breathing. 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5. Remember, inhale for 3, hold for 4, exhale for 5. As my bare feet absorb the power of the ocean, as my nose twitches to these new, rare, and beguiling smells, as I sink to my knees and taste the rough, barnacled rock, as my ears adjust to sound of bird cry, hermit crab scuttles, gurgling and circling water, as I'm on the edge in liminal, numinous, precious space, my whole being is absorbed. Today, on this day, with feelings of my childhood, of the untutored, unhindered, unabused boy. On the next moon, I will welcome other thoughts, perhaps, different feelings. So today, careless of onlookers, I wrap my own arms around my own self and say, I love you, self, my wee boy, I loves you so. And now I invite myself to play in rock pool and lounge on the sun-warmed rock. My whole awareness is focused on the sea for now. It is holding its breath at this, its lowest ebb, and now slowly, defiantly begins its flood, filling my whole being with unbounded hope and simple joy. With the tide now advancing, I bow deeply with sacred gratitude to the carpeted rocks, the forests of kelp, standing tall, proud and accompanied. I gather small handfuls of seaweed, cut with scissors, green ulva, brown laminaria, the purple, beautiful royal palmaria for the kitchen and fucus for the bathing. I reflect that the land upon which I have briefly grounded is soon to be deep underwater. And perhaps, just perhaps, no human has or will ever tread that sand again. As I said, I'm in Scotland, the land of my father, and there's a wonderful collection of prayers and songs from the Western Isles called the Carmina Gaelica, whose roots track back to pre-Christian days. I'd like to read a short song about the precious seaweeds, so essential in the poverty-stricken Western Isles for food preservation, medicine, and soil conditioner. Seaweed. Come from the sea as seaweed, red and brown seaweed, tangles thrown upon the shore, left by the ebbing tide. Gentle Bridget, Mary mild, Patrick, saint of power, Michael, bring us seaweed to fertilize our land. And now it's time for a wee walk. So we're going to go and find HMS Tub. This is Tallulah, my official greeter. Say good afternoon, Tallulah. And we have a fine fisherman's anchor and a warp of recycled lobster string. Oh, what have we got here? Ah, HMS Tub, with a curragh over there waiting to be skinned. And when I'm safely out of sight of you lot, I'm going to have a seaweed bath. And into that bath, I'm now going to put some Fucus serratus. There we go. So the idea is to run a bath, or if you're in a forest, do what I've done. And you put the seaweed in when it's hot, and then you top up with cold water. And the seaweed being in very hot water releases its oils. And every tub admiral has to have his own little boats to play with. So there are some curraghs, and there's the plimsoll line. We are all experts in shipping law now after the Suez embarrassment. That's my plimsoll line. Normally it would have Lloyd's Register on it, but this is Lindor Wood, my home. And what have we got here? We've got some of the glorious purple dillis called Dulse, Palmaria palmata. It's lovely. It's really lovely to eat. And finally, what we're harvesting now is Laminaria digitata, often called tangle up on the Western Isles, or kelp. Kelp is a word we actually use for any seaweed which is burnt for iodine. As I said, when you're safely out of the way, I'm going to strip naked and dive in. Anne-Marie, I'm waiting for my bath. You can go now.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I think we should go before the next thing happens. The inevitable submerging.
I think we're all a bit jealous.
This is what your bathwater will look like afterwards.
Goodness.
Carrigan moss.
This is our Carrigan moss celebratory pudding for later.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'll show you the moss, just following on the theme. It's from Western Isles, Carrigan moss. More on that later.
Thank you, Rory. Yeah, we're all quite jealous, and I'm just left wondering about the fire underneath the tub. That just looks amazing. Owen, you had something. You had your hand up. I wondered if there was something that you wanted to ask or make a comment.
That was a previous talk, really. I can leave it to another time, it's fine.
I see, but you've put a great note up about the iodine.
Yeah, I can remember it being used as a really good example of Gaia at work, that there's just a right amount of iodine sort of circulating between land and sea to facilitate what we need iodine for.
Thank you. So you're still there, Rory, are you?
I think he's gone in.
He's muted now. I'm not sure he's listening.
Well, I think we're all completely mesmerized at this point. Is this an everyday thing? Early morning, late at night. Imagine that with the moon and the stars. Better and better. So we've got a few minutes, and what's this, KO? Really interesting information about seaweed harvesting. Yes, well, Rory, I think given that we've had so many creative interventions and offerings all day, but you're the first for a bath with seaweed. So we've got a few minutes, but we're next up is we're leaving Fife and we're moving to Kerry in Ireland. And we're going to be joined by Kate Ritchie, who I think is already on our call. We've got a few minutes before we join with Kate. So if there are any other either questions in the chat for Rory, or I see Rory's still there.
Lucy, we can also show a short film.
Okay. Yep, we've got just under 5 minutes. So
do that. Can you instruct that?
I'm asking you. Yeah, but I think she can do that quick.
Do you know which film?
Yeah, it's called Chris McGinn, but it's called...
Ellie, could you show the Chris McGinn film?
It's called A Beach Dog Something.
It's got the word dog in the title.
A Beach Wool Dog.
Beach Wool Dog. If you can find that, Ellie.
Okay, that was a short film from Chris McGinn, who's an artist and lovely chap who lives in Edinburgh and that was Portobello Beach. Slight lockdown feeling about it, I think.
Thanks, Joe. Beautiful. So we welcome Kate Ritchie.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. Over to you.
My work is based on the Maharees Peninsula, and I'm going to show you some images and a video from there. But I actually live in Northern Ireland. In fact, I live very close to Banbridge, which is the birthplace of William Crozier, who's mentioned earlier today. He was the captain of the Erebus and features heavily in that series. Some people were talking about the Terror. The Maharees is the site of our holiday home, and unfortunately I haven't been there for since last summer. Like one of your other contributors, I am a late convert to art. I was a doctor, and I was an endocrinologist, and I know quite a lot now about iodine and the thyroid. So everything is resonating with me. Lots and lots of the presentations so far have been extremely interesting to me. I'm going to take you to share screen to a PowerPoint about the Maharees, and then there's going to be a video about one aspect of the work I did for my degree show, which was called Beach Keeping. So I'll go to share screen. Okay, so this is Brandon Bay, which is on the Dingle Peninsula in County Kerry, and this is the beach that I walk when I'm down there. I'll tell you a little bit about the Maharees. I said it was a peninsula, but it's actually a tombolo, which is a finger-like spit that connects several offshore islands. And a tombolo is, by its very nature, a very unstable environment. There's constant erosion and deposition of sand. And on this particular, this is the Google Earth view. As you can see, there's one road that goes up the tombolo, and it's very close to this beach here. And there's constant erosion there, particularly during the winter storms. It's a bit more stable on this side, and this other side is Tralee Bay, which is a very shallow bay, and there are various habitats here which are of particular interest. These images, by the way, are from the conservation group, which are doing a wonderful job down there in terms of replanting marram grass and protecting these environments. Tralee Bay, which is on this side of the on the east side of the tombolo, is a ground for where skates and rays come to lay their eggs. The other interesting fauna of the area is the natterjack toad. This image shows you a low tide picture on the east side of the tombolo, which tells us that at one stage there was a rise in sea level which drowned the trees that were growing here. And there is actually, at times you see a black substance in the sand which looks like tar, but is actually submerged peat. This is the natterjack toad, which is found in the area on the Maharees in the sand dunes. And the numbers are going down, but it's not yet endangered. This is my husband's hand here. We found one on a walk last year. Along the beach, you of course find loads of dead animals, and I found this dead stag a couple of years ago. I have no idea where it came from. And this is a typical site along the beach. The cattle roam the peninsula and graze freely, and of course there's a lot of marine debris, particularly from the fishing industry, which is for mainly for spider crabs and lobsters. So on my walks over the years, particularly after the storm surges in the winter, there's lots and lots of marine debris and principally plastic. And as you know, when you're walking along the tide line, what you find on the tide line varies. It's typically various seaweeds. Sometimes it's lots and lots of little jellyfish, particularly the moon jellyfish. And unfortunately, after storm tides, this is a very common finding, lots and lots of small pieces of plastic. That's the higher view of it. Like someone else earlier, I came late to art. I did a degree in fine art when I retired 7 years ago. And I decided to use some of the plastic I gathered as part of an installation in my degree show. I was a bit worried about aestheticizing plastic, but there is no doubt that it's very eye-catching. And in particular, people seem to like these boxes where I separated out the plastic in terms of the color and texture. And I had another cabinet in which I put things which I would call curiosities. I was particularly struck by the likeness of the degraded and eroded plastic to bone. And some of the pieces I picked up, the casual viewer had difficulty in telling the difference between bone and white plastic, which was degraded. Some other images. And of course, I had to think of some other way of gathering up the small bits of marine plastic, of microplastic. And I took a video of myself in the trying to clean up the beach using a domestic brush. And if you would now show that for me. Okay. Okay, so that's my little film about the task of trying to, it's a bit like Sisyphus, trying to clear the beach of microplastics.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate. As comments in chat have been saying, that's the scale and the tininess and the care and the carelessness, the two that it holds together, the domestic and that huge landscape that you've been in, really moving. So thank you, Kate. We will move on now, but I'm really glad that we got a chance to see your film, as well as the images and things. So thank you, Kate, and welcome, John. We're now joining John Seal down in Devon. So over to you, John. Welcome.
Hello, thank you very much. Do you remember the olden days when you say, hello, how are you? And now you say, can you hear me? So can you hear me? Yeah, great. Well, thanks very much for fascinating and intriguing contributions. You know, really incredible. And thanks so much for the opportunity to show my film. I'm a filmmaker, and like everyone else, I'm fascinated, you know, like everyone else, I have become more and more fascinated by where I live over the last few months. And I live 45, I counted it this morning, 45 paces from the sea. And in fact, where I'm standing now water should be up to about my knees. And about 8 o'clock tonight, the water will be over my head. But thankfully, there's a huge bank and a railway line in the way that stops that happening. But so the tide is really very much part of our existence. With the fantastic support of Anne-Marie and Joe, I've been making a series of films which walk around the estuary all the way from the southern side at Dawlish Warren, and they make their way around to the other side at Exmouth. And those short films are on the Tidelines website if you're interested to see those. But this film is a film that I made the day before yesterday, especially for today. And it's about rising tide, perhaps sort of obliquely about rising sea levels as well. I'd be really interested and delighted to hear your thoughts, and you know, to answer any questions or thoughts that you might have after the film. The film is now on YouTube, and it's on the Tidelines Around the X YouTube channel. So if there are any problems with playback, it can be seen there as well. Anyway, it's a poetry film, and it's really boring hearing somebody explain their poem to you, so it's much better if I just let it play.
If I walk over the road, I come to the sea. I could keep going. I could walk through sea to France, or turn right to America. There's a lot of sea. I live on the edge, but that edge isn't sharp. It moves and blurs as the moon cools on the water. Twice every day, a mass of ocean creeps across the land. Today is the highest tide of the year. In just 6 hours, the sea will rise a massive 4.3 meters. It's strange to think, with all this water, if the moon were to pull a bit harder or forget to wake up one night, it wouldn't be much for the water to topple and spill across this land. But we look up at the moon and say, the sea rising? That could never happen here. Could it?
Exquisite, John.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. Thank you.
Do you want to say any more about what your starting point was, or anything more about the making? Was it simply that it was there across your pathway?
I think I was really, and I have become increasingly more so, interested by this idea of the rising or of high tide being a kind of metaphor for where we're at. Been some really interesting comments during the day about the tide and what the tide is doing. I think it was, I'm sorry I've forgotten the name, but somebody said about that we shouldn't be afraid of the tide. And I think that's a really interesting comment. And actually I had thought about the tide is, you know, it's out there now. It's coming in now at 8 o'clock. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. It will be stunningly beautiful. It'll be sort of plump and full and pregnant and all those wonderful things. But there, if you experience tide coming in, if you watch tide coming in, it is also, you know, it's an unbelievable amount of power, and it is a kind of foreboding. And there is also a sense of menace about it. So all of that kind of, all of those things mixed up in that metaphor, and certainly, you know, when it plays out against what we all face, and what we face over the next generation or so. I think it really does, and several people have made this point, it really does. It's something to be noticed, it's something to be looked at. I think that was my kind of drive, I think.
A couple of hands up. Richard.
Yeah, I was just going to say two things, actually. One is, for those of you who don't know the estuary, the tidal flow is astonishing. I mean, the amount of land that is cleared during a tidal phase is just enormous. And the other thing I was going to say is, of course, the power of the sea in that area just up the coast, where you have that famous piece of railway line, where, we've seen the power of the sea absolutely palpably clear. And yet where I live here, which is not that much further around the coast, there is a piece of road that is absolutely under threat, and we've lost meters and meters of coastline since I moved here 8 years ago. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, that it's that much change. So, I think in just in our local waters here, that sense of change is quite palpable. But mostly I just wanted to say how extraordinary the estuary is, and a wonderful place for birds too, because they take advantage of the low tide.
I know we're going to be hearing from Laura Williams later, very particularly about the moon as well. But the idea that the moon might not wake up, or the moon might forget, also the idea the moon is actually slowly moving away from us 4 inches a year or something, is that sort of huge sense of, no, don't, we can, on a daily basis, the tide coming in and out, but something, as you say, slightly more foreboding. And it was Stacey who talked about, this idea of having to stop the tide, or hold it back. It was Stacey that mentioned that.
Picking up on Richard's point also is that sense that the sea and the tide is encroaching. But one thing I've really noticed, that walking around the Exe and filming around the Exe, is actually how much of it is kind of man-made, really. How much of that landscape is shaped by us. And if we've managed to shape that landscape in the way that we have, there is a kind of optimism there. We can do something about this. We can do something about a climate emergency. We do have the ability, we do have the power and the ability and the strength to do that. And, making a very obvious point, look at what we've done in the last few months. If we can do that, then yeah, it is a scary, frightening proposition, but we can sort it.
The Dutch have built dikes anticipating climate change big time, much more, in a much more systematic and long-term way than we have built our sea defences.
Anne-Marie.
Unmute. Hello. I was just going to say that that was beautiful, John. Thank you so much. It's so lovely to see our estuary after having travelled around the world today. And to say that Sophie Ward is speaking later. We do move into a bit of a moon phase as the evening draws on. And Sophie Ward is talking about the history of the tides. So how the tides over time have been very different to how they are now. So if people want to stay on, I'm just doing a bit of a plug there for Sophie.
And Godfrey's also talking about activism, which is another response to
rising seas.
Yeah.
John, thank you. You've made a really, really special, beautiful, beautiful film. Thank you. I hope there are many more to come. So thank you for joining us, John. And we've now got, we're welcoming Owen Jones. So are you set up?
I'm going to do 3 things optimistically, 2 short films and then a bit of screen sharing. And I sent the films in, so they should be playable.
So Is that Ellie? Ellie? Are
Yeah,
you?
I'm sure the films will be on standby. Just say when. Just say when, Owen.
Okay, well, the first film is silent. It's just simply me standing in the Severn Estuary with a phone panning it around. So I'm going to sort of introduce myself as the first film plays, assuming you can hear me when the film is streaming.
I think we should be able to, yeah.
Okay, so play film 1. just so move things along, hopefully, which I'm never very good at doing, though this is it. So I got to expand this. How do I do that? So through my blog, I'll just refresh it. So so through my blog, I'm doing a work with Heather Green, an amazing artist from America. She's been working on a bay in Mexico, which I'm slightly scared to try and pronounce, Bahia Adair. So that's a map on the left. And so in collaboration with me, she's now wants to do the same set of artworks on the Severn Estuary. And her artwork is very much, it's multi-media and has sound installation and all sorts of things. But one of her main things is going out into the estuary, into the bay where she lives at low tide and making casts. And she's interested in the marks left in the mud and the sand, although there it's nearly all sand. And marks made by humans and by animals and mollusks and things like that. And it's trying to just capture, and also the marks made by the movement of the water across the sand, where you get these incredible ripples, and the ripples sort of capture the movement of the tide. And so we're trying to do the same in the Severn Estuary, but it's all been messed up by COVID. But she's getting funding to come back and do a load of casts. But actually accessing the Severn Estuary is a totally different prospect, or parts of it, to accessing the bay where she's used to working. She grew up on this bay as a child, and I grew up by the Severn Estuary. So we're also writing a thing where we're sharing fragments of memory, as well as sharing images and all this, that, and the other. And so this is her preliminary sort of website or web page about this project, where she's sort of setting it up, and she hopes to do installations in galleries in Mexico and in Arizona, where she's at Arizona State University, and also then come and do the same here, and maybe sort of put on exhibition in Cardiff and in Bristol or Bath, each side of the estuary. So we're discovering all different types of marks. So that we call this a tree. So the thing on the right is when, as the tide ebbs, things are dragged across the sand until they can't float anymore. So you get a sort of extraordinary sort of a capture of the last moment of movement of an object. And Heather was very struck by these honeycomb worms at Dunraven Bay, which is sort of at the very far end of the Severn Estuary, really, where it's sort of Bristol Channel and more besides. Obviously, one of the things about her bay is that it's a negative estuary. It is not fed by rivers. It is just creeks that the tide washes in and then washes out again. But because it's very hot there, they're very highly saline, and there's very odd layers of saline and unsaline water in the estuaries, and so the ecology is very different. So once you start looking at these places closely, the sort of shifting patterns, the incredibly intense richness of ecology and sort of visual, the sort of natural ecology, but the visual ecology of these things are extraordinary. So there's more of these marks made in the Severn River by objects being dragged across the sea, across the riverbed as the tide ebbs. And then, so the pictures on the right, where further up river, where the Severn Bore will be, I don't know what time the Severn Bore is today. It's the marks that birds make are very sort of key to this as well, and the idea of these species moving through these spaces, and the casts she makes are quite a sort of technical accomplishment, because the mud is often so soft. But she's worked with scientists, so she does know a lot about the actual biology of these of the flats in Mexico. And we're building. She also produces books handcrafted books and lexicons of words and books which are made up of bits and pieces of stuff she's found. The paper is all made, and she does sort of laser printing. So the overall production is very rich, which I can't really represent here, but I'm just sort of showing you some of these pictures. So in a second, when this finishes, I'm going to stop screen sharing. In fact, I'll do it now to speed up. So this.
And did you had a third thing to show?
Yeah, it's only about
5 minutes.
Yeah, it's about 5 minutes long. So we've done a load of street theatre stuff in Bristol about the tides and about the rivers, which we try to make them fun, and we work with a street theatre company, and so you'll see the results, or one of the results.
Thank you.
So the film, this is on World Water Day in 2015, and it was filmed at high tide in Bristol, really early in the morning, actually.
Good people of Bristol and the green scrapitol, gathered here today at the Grand Syzygy, and you're here in this unique concatenation of the waters, and amongst these lovely people to take an oath in sight of the assembled crowd, and to swear your allegiance to the tides and all that sail upon them. Hold up your right hand. Say aye. Aye. Say aye, aye. Aye. Say aye, aye, Captain. Aye. Say aye, 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 like you very much. No. Stupid. You started it. I, hereby, do solemnly swear, upon the tidal reaches of the Avon, and the Bristol Channel, upon the Bay of Fundy, where's that? What's the other? In the name of the sun and the moon. In the name of the sun and the moon. Upon the eels, the salmon, and the lamprey. Upon the eels, the salmon, and the lamprey. Upon the cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh. Upon the cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh. In sight of the reeds and the redshank. In sight of the reeds and the redshank. Upon the oyster of the world. Upon the oyster of the world. To hereby. To hereby. Ever to. Ever to. Always. Always. In eternity. In eternity. In constancy. In constancy. Forever. Forever. Till the tides do us part. Till the tides do us part. Two. Visit the river. Visit the river. Witness the boar. Witness the boar. Paddle in the sea. Paddle in the sea. Search in the tidal pools. Search in the tidal pools. Drink from the spring. Drink from the springs. To take to the pill at the Shire Hampton. To take to the pill at the Shire Hampton. To gorge upon the suspension of particulates. To gorge upon the suspension of particulates. To love the Avon and all her tributaries. To love the Avon and all her tributaries. To never frown upon the Froom. To never frown upon the Froom. To take the new cut seriously. To take the new cut seriously. And. Wait a minute, I've messed up my pages.
Wait a minute, I've messed up my pages. Don't have to repeat that.
Two. Reimagine the nature of citizenship. To reimagine the nature of citizenship and community from ecological perspectives. That's a direct quote. To recognise the flow of water through everything. To recognise the flow of water through everything. To embrace the fluidity. To embrace the fluidity of all things. Wait till I finish. Don't repeat everything I say. Don't repeat everything I say. To embrace the fluidity of all things. To embrace the fluidity of all things. To love my Lou. To love my Lou. Not just mine, yours as well. Not just mine, yours as well. With only the 3 P's. With only the 3 P's. Paper, pee, and poo. Paper, pee, and poo. And furthermore. To never. Ever. Never ever to. Again. Drink water. From From a plastic bottle.
From a plastic bottle.
Shame on you. It's from a tap. I just filled it up. To be green.
To be green.
With envy.
With envy.
Whenever I see someone on a bicycle.
Whenever I see someone on a bicycle.
To understand marine energy and ecology.
To understand marine energy and ecology.
To lock into my heritage and my future.
To lock into my heritage and my future.
To embrace hydropoetics.
To embrace hydropoetics.
Art and music.
Art and music.
Till the day I die.
Till the day I die.
Not long now. To love the water cycle.
To love the water cycle.
And the bicycle.
And the bicycle.
To champion biodiversity.
To champion biodiversity.
And be part of Water City.
And be part of Water City.
Nearly finished.
Nearly finished.
To be a hydro citizen for the 21st century.
To be a hydro citizen for the 21st century.
And to learn to love my time.
And to learn to love my ties.
Amen.
Amen.
Mermen.
Mermen.
Barmen.
Barmen.
So help me squid.
So help me squid.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, there's much more to say, but I'll shush.
Thank you very, very much, Owen. That was an unbelievably rich swirl through so many things. Thank you very much. And you've already got somebody, Pete, picking up for a Morecambe Bay version. So that's fantastic. And now over to